Warning. Listening to this show may result in increased levels of inspiration, motivation, and innovation. Side effects can include the immediate urge to take massive action to build a better business and life for yourself and others. You've been warned. Welcome to Influencers Radio with your host, Jack Mize.
And welcome back to Influencers Radio. You know, here's a word that you don't hear enough of: infidelity. You know, it seems like that has been one of those, you hear it all the time now. It's almost like it's expected. You watch the reality shows, you see the Real Housewives playing musical husbands that, oh, he did this, time to go, it's over. I don't know how many divorces they have over the course of a season. It's just really something that you see way more than you have in a long time. And I know the divorce statistics are just out of this world. But it's something that in the real world, not on TV, that people deal with every day. And guess what? The people who deal with it, it wasn't something they expected to deal with. It's not something they necessarily signed up for. And there are people out there that find their way through it and turn it into something positive and really turn it into relationships that last a long time and probably go far beyond or even more fulfilled than they thought they ever could be. And today, my guests are Brad Robinson and Morgan Robinson. And what they do is they help couples to, I don't even, it's like say they help couples, that have experienced infidelity. They save marriages, but also they change the perspectives and help people get past that huge emotional burden that a lot of folks may feel is completely insurmountable, whether they stay together or not. So, Brad, Morgan, welcome to Influencers Radio.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jack.
Yeah.
Well, okay, before we get started, I have to ask, because this is the one thing that is on my mind. I know a lot of people want to know. What's the most common way, and even if you don't know the exact numbers, but so usually when people find out that their spouses cheated on them, it's there's the classic, they walked in on them. They're cheating on someone, cheating with someone, their friends told them, someone told them, or it's the breakdown. Husband cheats on his wife but just can't take the guilt anymore, and I've got something to tell you, honey, won't you please forgive me?
Yeah.
What do you see?
Jack, that's a great question. What we typically see is we don't really see too often people come in who actually physically witness the affair. And part of that is people just file for divorce the next day. I've had a few couples where that's happened. And we've actually helped them work through it, which is pretty amazing. The other type of scenario you mentioned where people have a guilty conscience and confess it, most people, if it was up to them, would take it to their grave. They know how devastating and how destroying it can be to a marriage. And so only a few will actually admit to it. And the other scenario, the most common way that people actually find out is through social media. They'll log into their spouse's Facebook, see their messages, or they'll see that their spouse is spending a lot of time on their cell phone, or they'll find that their spouse has gotten a text message and they'll discover it that way, which is honestly is a really dangerous way to find out about it, because you can see the whole relationship and the whole relationship history of that affair, where you're seeing the I love yous, you're seeing the emotional exchanges that are taking place. And that can be really traumatizing for people.
Oh, I get that. That's probably worse than walking in on them.
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, that can be a lot.
You're seeing the history documented, uncensored. Watch it all unfold like that. So that's what I'm talking about. People feel that that's insurmountable. Most people think that when something like this happens, and people that have never experienced this, a lot of times they say, oh, well, if he ever did that to me or she ever did that to me, that's it. It's over. Boom, boom. No talking about it. So do you find that tune changes a little bit when it actually come down to it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Most of the time people, before it happens to them, they're just like, you know what, if this ever happened, just like you said, Jack, they're like, it's over. I'm not going to do anything with you. you've hurt me too bad. But truly, most people, both men and women on either side of the betrayal, they make it work. They really want to heal from it. And most people try. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Jack, most people feel crazy for wanting to stay.
Right.
Yeah. I had somebody describe it this way one time. He said, after his wife betrayed him, he said, I feel like I've got two sons and one of them murdered the other son. I'm grieving the loss of the son that died, but also I'm grieving for the son that killed the son.
Yeah, we're talking about the relationship. Yeah.
Well, talking about their feelings for the spouse who betrayed them.
Yeah, it feels like your death. That's what it feels like, death.
Well, you're conflicted inside.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you can conflicted not just in the way you're feeling, but also in the way that you anticipated that you would feel in this situation. You know, do you find that people feel that I want to stay, but is that going to make me be weak? Is that going to make me feel weak? Am I going to be perceived? My friends are going to think I'm crazy for wanting to stay, because it kind of goes against the logic what most people think. But you're saying that more times than not, the people, their preference would be to work it out if they could get past it.
Yeah, Jack, they did some research a while back, and this is surprising. It's actually the same number. It's 72% of men and women both that try to make it work after they discovered they've been betrayed. And so it's kind of like that myth, and most people feel this way. You betray me, it's over, it's my out, we're done. But in reality, most people really give it a fair share. They really try to make it work.
And I think people feel like those that do not try, that 72% that do try, the ones that don't try, I think it's because they buy into the myth that there is no healing, that it's just, that you can't, that, like you're saying, it's insurmountable, that there's no way to actually heal. But there is a way to heal and to rebuild your relationship and to make it better than it was before, and to actually, keep your family together and keep the kids together and all of those things that people really want. It's possible. And I think a lot of people think that it's just not possible. And truly it is. It is. You can heal from this.
So almost like when you're talking about those physical wounds, what you're saying is it's probably going to leave a scar.
Yeah.
But over time, it may be one that you never even notice anymore.
Well,
Jack, one of the things that we try to help couples work towards is something called post-traumatic growth, where they, not that they're happy they ever went through an affair, but there's good that came out of this that couldn't have happened otherwise. There's change that came out of a failure. There's success. There is positive growth that came out of something so painful. And this post-traumatic growth is actually more normal than it is. It's more normal to grow from it and to bounce back from it than it is to limp from it and kind of have a debilitating limp or walk with crutches in your marriage. Most people really, if they got to do the right things, but they really can rebound nicely and be resilient. The usual pattern is growth and resilience,
right,
and closeness, and not limping or bitterness
or distance.
Well, one of the things that was really intriguing when we were talking before about this is how sometimes or oftentimes relationships get better and even stronger than they were before through this event, major event. And I would imagine that over the course of working through this stuff, there's probably a period where you go through the blaming. Well, whose fault is it? This is why I cheated, or, this is why this is. And you probably are able to root out some probably problems that weren't discussed before or weren't acknowledged before, that all of a sudden now they are and they can work through. Would you find that you to be able to bring those up helps you get those out that they never were before?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people, they typically will, like before the affair happened, there was a perfect storm. I mean, people were usually in a negative cycle that they were kind of caught in, never really understanding each other at a deeper emotional level. And I think some people think, well, if we just ignore it, or if we just don't, if we just don't talk about it, it'll go away. Eventually I'll feel better. But the truth is they don't. Even 20 years after the affair was discovered, people are still, 20 years ago, you hurt me. And truly, it's because it's a deep emotional wound, and people can't ignore it for it to go away.
Yeah.
You really have to work on it, and you have to really heal from it. Or those wounds, they stay there. They don't. They need to be stitched up, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they get caught in these negative cycles even before the affair happened, and then they try to heal from the affair in these negative patterns of communicating. And those defenses
Jack,
just stay put up.
Yeah, and Jack, what Morgan's saying is really right. She's, basically, this negative cycle that a couple had before they had an affair, before the affair was discovered, is the negative cycle or pattern, or even you could even say it's the way of relating that they have while they're trying to work through the affair.
Right.
And that's the biggest misconception to affair recovery. Is people think honesty is the most important thing, and honesty is vital. Honesty is so important, but to really rebuild a marriage, you have to deal with those negative cycles, those ways of interacting,
right.
Because it's the negative cycle that really honestly becomes the most, in my opinion, the most important issue.
Right, it hinders them from growth and moving forward.
Because that was there before the affair. In fact, in some cases, it may even made the affair possible.
Right.
That's what I wanted to jump into is a lot of, that was something that kind of surprised me. It's not what a lot of people think, that the signs, the symptoms that something may be going on, or, the marriage is in trouble or might lead someone to affair is, the fighting, but we weren't fighting. That's what you think about that causes these problems. But you're saying that there's really some more unrecognized signs that people don't realize, and it could be the complete opposite of fighting. Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, Jack, one of the things that we've coined, a phrase that we've coined, it's called the psychology of the betrayer. And something that's really just fascinated me is, how do you have somebody who's in love with somebody get to a point where they're willing to betray that same person? And that, I just find that fascinating. And part of what we've discovered just working with couples is the betrayer usually gets to a place where they feel burned out in the marriage. They usually feel very tired in the marriage or relationship. They feel resentful. They feel alone. And basically what's happening is they of course they feel sad, but they start caring less about maintaining that relationship. Maybe they're not actively seeking a divorce, but they're not really putting as much into it as they once were. And so...
And that's where it can, I guess, slip or fade, and it's easier to let go or to go and drift away when you don't see that participation or...
Right, that you don't matter, when they don't feel like they matter to their partner. They don't feel like they are important, that their hurt is really felt by their spouse or their partner. And so then they feel like, well, I'm just not that important to you. And it's that negative cycle where, they don't know how to share that hurt, that sadness, that fear, that not feeling good enough. Instead, they show that anger or that criticism or that defensiveness, and their partner doesn't see the hurt. They just see the anger. And so then they might feel sad, but they'll show their avoidance or their shutting down. And so it's this big, horrible misunderstanding, this miscommunication. And so people get stuck there, and until they can really share those deep emotional hurts or sadness, they're not able to really start to heal from the affair, because they're still stuck in that shallow pattern, that negative cycle.
Yeah. And
so they don't really get a good picture of how they really mean to their spouse, or how how important they really are. And so they fall apart over time.
Yeah. And Jack, to build on what Morgan's saying, is men and women typically will have an affair for different reasons. Men will have an affair, to boil it down, basically people have an affair if they're not philanderers, or meaning somebody who has loose morals, or they're not a sex addict. They're usually somebody who has experienced a lack of connection with their spouse or partner. And what I mean by that is men may have never known how to connect. They may not even really think much about relationships at all, or their feelings at all. And so they don't know how to turn to their wives or their girlfriends and say, I'm lonely, I'm really struggling. Somebody, my dad just died. I'm really having a hard time with this. And so it's easier and they're more comfortable in shallow relationships. And so it's more comfortable for them to turn to somebody at work that is just around them for a little bit and talk about some deeper things because their rejection isn't as deep. Their disapproval doesn't hurt them as much.
Yeah. So, and I guess that's we see a lot of the reasons that people convince themselves or give themselves permission to do that kind of thing because of those those feelings. Now, clearly you've helped hundreds of couples go beyond this and rebuild after affairs when, like we said, a lot of people think that this isn't something that is easily to get past. But I also want to point out that, some people come to you and say, you know what, I'm not sure we want to get past this. I'm not sure that this is something I really want to do or we really want to stay together. And, I think, Morgan, you talk about just for a second that your goal necessarily isn't to make this work no matter what, but it's really to facilitate getting through the issues. Is that right?
Our goal really is to help the couple find their goals and to help them to achieve their goals. And I think most couples want to feel better. They want to feel happier. Even if they both decide, look, we're not meant to be together, or this isn't what we want to stay together, at least that they're going to be able to, move forward and move past it as an individual. They can heal from it. And then they won't take, these hurts, these pains, these traumas into their next relationship. And, they can actually have, if they decide co-parenting is what they need to do, if they have kids, they won't have this animosity like they would if they hadn't healed from the betrayal. So absolutely, it's really, our goal is really to help them achieve their goals. And if they decide that they don't want to stay together, then that's up to them. But most people do. Most people try to work it out and heal from it.
Go ahead.
I was just going to comment and say something that we want is it's really important to us that as couples work through the affair recovery process and rebuilding process, that both of them are able to depend on their spouse emotionally.
Yeah.
And, if you read a lot of the things online, I just kind of get really disturbed by a lot of the things I read online about how to work through an affair. A lot of it is about the betrayer losing all rights in their relationship or marriage. And what happened, a lot of this is created by people who've actually been betrayed.
Right.
And that may work temporarily, like they become a doormat. That doesn't mean that I'm not saying they shouldn't be honest, but a lot of these ideas are that person loses all right and they cease to be a human.
Right.
When what we want to really create a truly happy marriage, and a marriage where infidelity is less likely to occur.
Right.
It's where both of them feel like they can depend on each other emotionally.
Right, because it takes two to tango. You can't have a relationship with one person and not the other.
Well, they have to feel secure emotionally. And those deep emotional bonds are the best prevention of another affair happening. Not somebody living in guilt and shame and misery for years.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think the bottom line is what the outcome is. Healing. Yeah. That's the big word I hear. Healing. Happiness after infidelity.
Right.
There is a way to achieve healing and happiness after infidelity. Morgan, Brad Robinson, how can folks find out more about you and find out more about what you're doing out there?
Absolutely. You can find out more about us through bradandmorgan.com. Healingfromanaffair.com is the program website, but you can find a link to that through bradandmorgan.com, and 90 Days to Affair Recovery is the program.
All right. Fantastic. This truly does make you influencers in my book. I appreciate you coming on to Influencers Radio today and sharing this stuff, because this affects probably more people than a lot of folks really imagine. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you very much.
All right, folks, there you have it. Check it out. I guarantee if you don't need this, there's probably someone in your lives that is touched by this, and some very, very good information here. So check it out. And until next time on Influencers Radio, remember, you are the only real game changer.
You've been listening to Influencers Radio. To get all past shows and updates on future shows, visit influencersradio.com today or follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/influencersradio.